If you've been listening to my podcast for a while, if you've been watching the show for a while, you know that on this show, I try to do a lot of different things, but for our purposes today, I always want to be clear when I tell you that we know something to be true, that we suspect something to be true based on some evidence and data, or that we're just guessing and speculating. We can now move from mere speculation to we can suspect based on early data that the Omicron variant, or the Omicron as some call it, it's actually Omicron, that the Omicron variant, which led to market turmoil over the last couple of weeks, panic everywhere, might actually be less severe in terms of its rate at which it causes severe disease than the Delta variant. That is potentially a very welcome change to this trajectory of the COVID pandemic. Now, I'm going to tell you what is making us suspect that, and I'm going to be clear about the fact that we are still missing some of the data that we need. We are now close to 2 weeks since the big kind of coming out party of Omicron, which took control of the corporate news cycle starting on and right after Thanksgiving, lasted several days, and now sort of in subsequent forms has lasted nearly 2 weeks. Dr. Anthony Fauci, who heads up the NIH, lead infectious disease doctor in the United States, is now calling the early signs encouraging about Omicron. Without question, this variant appears to be as or up to significantly more contagious than Delta. That's sort of like one side of the equation. It's spreading rapidly, it's spreading very rapidly, and hospitalizations are going up. But the data we have so far is that the hospitalizations are going up because of Delta driving hospitalizations. It does not appear at this time that Omicron is actually leading to significant hospitalization at all. It is spreading quickly. It may ultimately outcompete Delta in terms of infections, but for right now, and Dr. Fauci concurs, it is encouraging that while it appears to be more contagious, it seems to be less severe. Now, the dream scenario would be that Omicron, in exchange for being wildly contagious, is more of a cold than a serious virus with a death rate close to 1%, as COVID has been throughout this pandemic. That means it will spread, but fewer people comparatively will end up in the hospital and die. That's the hope, and we don't yet know. Dr. Fauci was on CNN this weekend where he said, quote, "Thus far, it does not look like there's a great degree of severity to it, but we have really got to be careful before we make any determinations that it is less severe or it really doesn't cause any severe illness." So this is really the key thing to understand. If you look at something for 15 seconds and then make a conclusion, you are almost certainly not operating even with the full data that we have. And the full data that we have is still not as full as it ultimately needs to be. If you just look and you see, wow, cases are spiking, hospitalizations are up, Omicron must be a disaster. But remember, we expected to some degree that cases and hospitalizations were going to spike during the winter. The question is the news about Omicron from nearly 2 weeks ago the reason for the spiking hospitalizations? And it appears for now that the answer is no. It is Delta driving hospitalizations in the north of the US, not Omicron. So still understand that if Omicron is as contagious as it might be, it will infect a lot more people. So even if the hospitalization rate is lower, you might still end up with more people hospitalized in terms of raw numbers. Some of them will end up in the ICU. Some of them will die. Just imagine, this is made up, but imagine that we determined Omicron is 3 times as contagious, but half as deadly. That still means more people are going to end up in the hospital, a lower percentage of those that get the virus, but more people will end up in the hospital. Lastly, we also have to remember that the prevailing narratives about these variants at the start are often untrue. And that's why I've been going out of my way. I mean, nearly 2 weeks now that I've been saying, right now, all we have is anecdotes. Now, all we have is preliminary data. That's where we are right now. With Delta, initially, it was all sort of muted. It was more neutral. It was starting to spread in other countries and hospitalizing a lot of people, but there was not really the panicked media coverage. And then a huge spike with tons of deaths hit the United States and basically everywhere. And then the media coverage changed. With Omicron, the coverage started with complete and total panic. Now it seems it may be more mild, still could end up going some other way. The point is, 2 weeks in, we don't know. And for now, I wouldn't be taking any chances on the assumption that it's more mild. In a few weeks, we will know for sure. Now, over time, this is how viruses stop being a pandemic. We learned this in our interview with Columbia University's virologist, Vincent Racaniello. In general, viral evolution tends to be more contagious and less severe, but it can still be deadly for years and years and years. Now, from a kind of sociological standpoint, the level of fatigue with this is obviously very, very high. A lot of people just feeling, I'm throwing in the towel. It's time to move on. I'm not going to pay attention anymore. I'm going to do whatever. That's not where I am right now. As I've said in bits and pieces, I got my third shot. Early data is that third shot is very effective at preventing you from getting sick at all. Much more than just the 2 doses. We're still waiting on more data there, but that's hopeful. Any place that says masks recommended, I'm wearing a mask. I'm not going to movie theaters. I'm not going to concerts. I'm not going to sporting events and these types of large events. I am going to restaurants indoors if the tables aren't very close together. I care less about, do I have to wear a mask up to the counter to order? I care more about, am I going to sit for an hour really, really close to another table? I'm not going to those. I'm not going to bars where people are hanging out for hours. I am, of course, flying, but with a mask that's legally required. And I'm seeing friends who I know are vaccinated and whose daily risk level is acceptable to me. They either work from home or, have a low level of risk indoors. I am doing that. It is true. The right's talking points are always, they grapple with a kernel of truth and go too far. Isolation has consequences, but for a long time, for me, the risk balance told me I'm going to stick with the isolation. With what we now know and having 3 doses, I'm more comfortable trading some risk for decreased isolation and more socialization. Everybody has to run this calculation for themselves, but the key is run it with actual accurate information, which we are still gathering when it comes to the Omicron variant.
The only streaming service that specializes in documentaries is CuriosityStream, and you can get CuriosityStream, one of our sponsors, for just $15 a year when you use my link below. This will give you access to the world's best selection of documentary films. There's always so many that you can't get on Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon. I just finished watching a tremendous film, The CEO of Sinaloa, a region of Mexico. It's about El Chapo. Fascinating. CuriosityStream is a must-have if you love documentaries. They always have the best and newest titles. They're always adding new things to the library. And you can watch on all of your devices. They've got documentaries on every topic you can imagine. CuriosityStream is giving my audience 25% off a subscription, making it just $15 a month. Go to curiositystream.com/Pacman. The link is down below.